Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh Jeffreys video. In this video, we're going to be repairing this Motorola G8 Plus, one of Motorola's mid-range smartphones from late 2019. According to the seller I got this phone off, it was dropped onto the leg of a computer chair, which pulverized the front glass. The LCD beneath is still working, but of course it is very difficult to use, given the obstruction caused by the shattered glass and the risk of cutting your finger with just a swipe of the display. To begin our repair, I'll first have to remove the back panel from the phone. This will be done by first softening the adhesive using a heat plate or similar method. After a few minutes, the phone can be pulled off and we can now attempt to open up the phone. Using a suction cup, I'll pull up on the plastic backing, which will create a gap between the frame and back panel, just wide enough to insert a plastic pick. If the gap doesn't form, the phone needs further heating. Working the pick around the perimeter of the phone, we can cut through the adhesive. The glue used on this phone was strong enough to hold the back panel on without it being difficult to remove. In fact, this is one of the only phones I've been able to get the pick all the way around the perimeter in one go without having to reheat the phone. One thing to look out for is the fingerprint reader, which doubles as the Motorola badge. Unlike Samsung's Galaxy S8 and S9 series of phones that had a similar design, this fingerprint reader cannot be unplugged just yet. So it's important to watch out for that cable and make sure that the back panel isn't entirely removed just yet. We need to detach the plastic shield that's covering the motherboard and all of its cables and connections. There are several Phillips head screws that need to be unfastened in order to remove it. With those out, there's still a few clips holding it in place. With the work of my spudger, it comes right out. After unplugging the battery, the fingerprint cable can be disconnected, allowing the back to finally be detached. Inside, we can see the 4000 mAh battery, motherboard, and the camera array with the laser autofocus system which sits below it. Ideally, I wanted to remove the motherboard before replacing the display. While not necessary, it would prevent it or the cameras from being damaged while I'm working on other parts of the phone. Although I wasn't able to get the motherboard out, I disconnected all of the cables and the one screw, but it just wouldn't budge. As I didn't strictly need to remove it, I decided to leave it alone and proceed with the display replacement. For that, I'll still need to remove the front camera. This will prevent it from being damaged while the screen is being removed or glued back onto the phone. Another necessary component to come out is the battery, as the display cable runs beneath it. Disappointing is the lack of an easy to remove battery. Without any pull tabs, I am forced to resort to my heat plate and isopropyl alcohol to weaken the glue. After some prying and a good pull from the suction cup, it finally breaks free. I'll remove that display cable mentioned earlier, and now it is finally time to try and get up that display panel. As we just had the phone situated on a heat plate to remove the battery, at the same time we've also heated up the display. After making an incision with my Jimmy tool, I can work a few picks around the edges of the display, separating it from the frame. Fortunately, this phone has no adhesive in the middle section of the screen, just around the perimeter, which made it fairly easy to remove. With the screen out, it's time to test it to see if it still works. In a lot of cases, you'll destroy the screen regardless, as these things are incredibly fragile and break with just the slightest amount of flex. And surely enough, you can see this one no longer works. I will attach the plastic shield over the motherboard for this next part, just to protect it while I clean off the remaining glass and adhesive from the frame of the phone. It's important to remove it all, as just one little piece of glass stuck behind the display can destroy the LCD. With everything cleaned off, it's time for a new display. Motorola differs from a lot of other phone manufacturers in that they partnered with iFixit to sell genuine parts to consumers. In a previous video, I repaired Mr. Mobile's Motorola Razr 5G using genuine parts. I purchased this phone to showcase this step in the right direction for supporting right to repair. However, with this phone, that wasn't the case. As it wasn't sold in the US, I wasn't able to source the part through iFixit's partnership, so I reached out to the company directly. A customer care representative stated as the phone wasn't from the UK, they couldn't assist, and that they don't supply replacement parts. I understand a company likely wouldn't be selling parts directly to a consumer, rather to a reseller or something similar, although nothing was mentioned about sourcing genuine parts. So, being left on my own, I sourced out an aftermarket LCD display for the device. Before gluing in the screen, we need to test it first. If it's faulty and we went to the trouble of sticking it down, removing it might physically damage the screen, resulting in the seller refusing the return. This will also allow us to check the fitment of the display to ensure it's sitting flush before committing to having it permanently attached. I'll connect its flex cable and a battery, and you can see that it is indeed working. I will remove the battery and display panel we just test fitted so I can install some adhesive. For this, I'll be using a combination of both tape and liquid adhesive. My preference is to use tape wherever possible, as it's stronger and doesn't require time to cure. As the bezels of this screen are tiny, the surface area for actual glue is microscopical, so I'll have to use liquid glue for these areas. With the glue applied, it's time to fit our new display to the frame. After it's lined up correctly, I'll use some rubber bands to hold it in place while the glue dries. This will prevent the screen from lifting. After 3 hours, I came back and removed the rubber bands. The glue will take 24 hours to fully dry, so I'll need to apply them again after I've reassembled the phone. While this is okay for repairing your own devices, waiting hours for glue to dry is impractical if you are running a phone repair business. It's now time to start reassembling the internals of the device. I'll need to reconnect any missing flex cables or connections to the motherboard that I removed earlier. That includes some antennas and connecting up our new display. For our battery, I removed any creases that occurred from pulling it out of the phone, just flattening them out with a spudger. From there, the battery could be reinstalled using the same adhesive that was there originally. Connecting up the battery, we can test out the phone to make sure the display is still working after installation. With everything working right, it's time to move across to the back panel where we can prep it for installation. I'll need to remove all of the old adhesive before applying some fresh stuff. I'll also take this opportunity to clean the back panel. The reason for this is it's hard to clean around the camera lenses once they're installed. There's quite a lot of grime around here, but nothing my spudger couldn't remove. As I didn't have any pre-cut templates for this phone, I'll just use my tape-based adhesive to run around the perimeter of the back panel. This phone doesn't have any official IP, water or dust resistant rating, so I'm not too concerned. We can reattach the fingerprint reader cable back onto the motherboard before attaching the plastic shield that needs to be attached over the top. I'll secure all of the Phillips head screws back into place, and thankfully these are all the same length, so it doesn't really matter if you muddled them up during the disassembly process. From here, we can remove all of the plastic protective film over the adhesive on the back panel before attaching it to the mid-frame of the phone, firmly pressing it down into place. Now all that's left to do is remove the plastic protective film. And we're done. So this is it, my repaired Motorola G8 Plus, a mid-range smartphone with a Snapdragon 665 processor, 4GB of RAM, and 64GB of storage. While my initial plans to source genuine Motorola parts didn't work out for this device, I now know their willingness to sell replacement parts isn't as clear-cut as I once thought. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffreys video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the phone restoration playlist for more videos just like this one. And if you're looking for any used devices, be sure to check out my online store, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.